So, The Kingsman for me is one of those movies where I'm not entirely sure how and why it actually exists. But you know what? I'm happy it does. The Kingsman. Now, The Kingsman is a bit of an interesting situation with me because I'm a huge fan of the Kingsman franchise. I absolutely adore the first Kingsman movie, Kingsman Secret Service, because that's an amazing movie. And also, I still really enjoy the second Kingsman movie, Kingsman The Golden Circle. Even so that film has got loads of problems, just seeing Elton John do ninja kicks for some reason works in that film, and I still really enjoy it today. So naturally, I was quite excited for The Kingsman. However, this film was originally meant to come out in like February 2020, and then it got delayed because of the Fox merger with Disney, and basically Fox funded this film, and so it got delayed to like September 2020, then obviously it didn't come out then because of the pandemic, and then it got delayed to like March 2021, and then obviously it still didn't come out then because of the ongoing pandemic, and then finally it came out on Boxing Day 2021. However, I didn't get to see it till like the 29th of December 2021 because I don't really like going out a lot around Christmas. I don't know why that matters at all, but I just don't. So yes, I didn't see it till just before New Year. And when I first saw the film, I really enjoyed it. But the thing is though, it was also quite an overwhelming experience because I've been waiting for the film since February 2020. So watching it for the first time, it was quite overwhelming. And I knew I'd have to watch the film again to really grasp my opinion on the film as a whole and do a full review of it like I'm doing today. And so here we are, my thoughts overall on The Kingsman after watching it a second time. And honestly, I've got to say, I really like this movie. I think it's a lot of fun, I think it's really enjoyable. And like Ray Fiennes said in an interview, I saw him say this in an interview, it's like one big roller coaster. And that's kind of why I like the film so much overall. Honestly, I think it's a lot of fun in the end. With the threat that, cinemas in the UK might close anytime soon, I like to go to the cinema recently and just have quite a bit of fun. And that's what I had with The Kingsman. I saw it again last night, and I really enjoyed it. And you know what? That's what I'm going to take away from it as a whole. I mean, I do think the film has got some big problems, and I will talk about my biggest problem in the film in this video today, but I also want to talk about the positives as well, hence why I titled this video, Why I Like The Kingsman. So let's briefly talk about my problem first of all. Basically, my big problem with this film is the plot. Essentially, this film tries to ingrain itself into these big World War I historical events, and honestly, that's why I think it starts to fail. I just think it should have done the Indiana Jones thing, when Where's the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones' Last Crusade, World War II is going on, but Indiana's story is taking place, at the same time. He's not affecting any big historical events that took place during World War II, but his story is just a bit of fun, and it's taking place at the same time as World War II. And I know in Indiana Jones and Last Crusade, Indiana bumps into Hitler in one scene, but he doesn't kill Hitler. Him bumping into Hitler in that scene doesn't affect any big World War II historical events. But the thing is though, if that was a Kingsman movie, he would. One of the Kingsman members would just shoot Hitler in that scene and that completely affects all the historical events taking place in that movie. And that's what happens with The Kingsman. Honestly, one of the big plot points early in the film is the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. And essentially, basically, I don't really know how the war started. I have learned about it in history all those years ago. And by the way, I've slept since then, so I don't really remember much about history all the way back in secondary school. But I remember the assassination of Franz Ferdinand being a big reason why World War I began. In fact, what I can remember was kind of like the main reason. And essentially, that's one of the big plot points in this film. And it just... right then, I knew the first time I watched it, and the second time as well, I knew that it was starting to lose me. And I don't really like that in the film. I just find all the political stuff confusing, and it's just a bit naff, to be honest, and boring. And I hate using that phrase, but I was going to be honest, I do find it boring. And even so, Tom Hollander does a great job playing 3 different characters. I just don't find it interesting. If there's a joke there, I don't get it either, because I'm not into all the political stuff. It's not for me. But, saying that though, about halfway into the film, it starts to save it for me. When Rasputin shows up, honestly, that's when I start to really enjoy myself. Because actually, about over half of the movie, I like quite a lot. and under half the movie I'm not the biggest fan of. And on the surface, that sounds like I only like half the film, but actually, that over half the film which I do like, I really like, and that under half the film, which I'm not the biggest fan of, it's outweighed by the good stuff in my opinion, and that's when Rasputin shows up, and it's just so much fun to watch. Honestly, Western fans as Rasputin is chewing up the scenery in the best way possible, in the way you want him to in this film, and when he shows up, it is so good. Like, the scene where he first meets Ray Fiennes' character, there's this big action scene, with a big action fight sequence, and it's just so good. Honestly, it really is. Like some, theme play in the background, bum bum bum, I don't know what that theme's called, by the way, but yeah, it's so good. And just the action in that scene is fantastic. Honestly, there's something with action in a Matthew Vaughn directed movie. And I'm not saying he directs the action, and the chances are he doesn't. The chances are the second unit director, he normally does action in an action movie. But the thing is though, like, there's something about action in a Matthew Vaughn directed movie, whether it's Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, or any of the Kingsman movies, where the action just leaps off the screen in the best way possible, and it's just incredible to watch. And that's, that happened with the previous two Kingsman movies, and it happens here. And I really like that about this movie. I think the action is incredible, and I think it leaps off the screen in the best way possible. And not only in that fight sequence between the two Kingsman members, Comrad and Damon Honsu's character, but also with Infanter's Rasputin. And I just think that fight sequence is just so good. It takes place about 45 minutes into the film, the action sequence I'm talking about, and I just think that one leaps off the screen and is so good. And that action sequence saved the movie for me. Honestly, I get bored, but then when Western fans properly shows up as Rasputin, and he's in a good couple of sequences about 45 minutes into the film, that's when it starts to work for me. That's when the film starts to run, it sprints, and that's when I start to really enjoy it. And also, I enjoy the action in the final part of the film as well. I think the final set piece is so much fun to watch. And also, Ray Fiennes as like the big main action star of the film is fantastic. And by the way, side note here, not that this is relevant whatsoever, not that I'm dissing the actor, but basically, Lewis, which I went to go watch a film with yesterday, and which many people might remember from, years and years ago on this channel, or should I say months ago on this channel, but nevertheless, Lewis, who went to go see the film with yesterday, he actually calls Ray Fiennes Ralph Fiennes. I just found that quite funny. Not that it's relevant whatsoever, I just find it quite funny. But yes, basically, Ray Fiennes is in there, and he's so good in this movie. Honestly, he's just so good in there. And basically, he shows up, and he's basically the big main action star of the film, and he's in all these fight sequences throughout the movie, and he's just so good. Honestly, I'm so surprised that Ray Fiennes has never been in an action movie beforehand. I mean, I know he played Voldemort in Harry Potter, but not the same sort of thing. And here, he's so good in this movie. He really is, and he's so fantastic to watch. And also, there's a fight sequence with him and another famous actor towards the end of the film. I'm not going to give away who that actor is, because it's a bit of a spoiler. But there's a fight sequence between him and someone else later on in the film, which I thought was brilliant. If Ray Fiennes did use stunt doubles in this movie, I can't tell. Like, the chances are he did, because, he's getting on now. He's quite an old actor. I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad actor whatsoever. I think he's a fantastic actor, but he's also getting on now. So the chances are he did use stunt doubles in this movie. But it's not obvious if he did. And I just think that the action sequences he's in, he's so good. And it's a sword fight sequence on the film with him and another famous actor, which is just so good. And I just thought it was so well directed, I really did. And also, in all those action sequences, the musical score is rolling and in the best way possible. And also, on the topic of music, a little side note here, which is still, it's still a significant part of the movie, but the song in the end credits of the movie is so good. And honestly, it's like Measure of a Man, and it's a cinematic version. It's a cinematic version of the song, and I think it's great. I think it's better than most Bond songs that I've had in the past couple of Bond movies. I've not really been a fan of the Daniel Craig Bond movie songs. I've not really been a fan of the Skyfall song, the Spectre song, or the No Time to Die songs. I kind of like the Casino Royale song, but not as a Bond song. But then here, the song played at the end credits of The Kingsman sounds more like a Bond song than most Bond songs recently, in my opinion. And honestly, I really like it. I think it's a really good song, and I've listened to it a lot of Spotify recently. And at the same time, though, going back onto the movie, though, one other thing I really like about this movie is the fact that it's a prequel. In the end, it probably would be more beneficial for the studio, for Fox, to actually have a sequel to Kingsman: The Golden Circle instead of a prequel. Because normally, if you do these Kingsman movies, normally you do Kingsman 1, Kingsman 2, Kingsman 3, then you go and do the prequel. Or you do the prequel before Kingsman 1, although technically it's not a prequel there. But still, you get my point. Normally, you do the prequel after you've done the original 3 films. But the thing is, though, that's not what Matthew Vaughn did. Actually, Matthew Vaughn, the director of the film, director of all the Kingsman films up to this point, he went, okay, I'm going to make Kingsman 1 and 2, and then I'm going to make a prequel, and then I'm going to go make Kingsman 3. Because Kingsman 3 has been announced, with Taron Egerton and Colin Firth, and I'm looking forward to that movie quite a lot. But the thing is, though, I like the fact that he made a prequel, because at first, it was a bit like, really? We're doing a prequel after Kingsman 2? Why don't we just get Kingsman 3? But actually, now I look at it, I'm like, oh, he did a prequel, and Fox funded it. This big budget studio funded the prequel, and it's his own beast, and it's different, but at the same time, though, similar to Kingsman: The Golden Circle and Kingsman: Secret Service, and in the best way possible. I love the fact that it was a prequel. I love the fact that the studio funded that. I love the fact that the studio went, actually, you know what, Matthew, we're going to be fine with you making a prequel instead of a sequel here, because I actually really like the fact that it's a prequel. Seeing a Kingsman story in a World War I and a World War II setting is quite an interesting idea, and that's exactly what this movie is. And that's another reason I like it, actually. That's another reason, let's move on to the next reason why I like this movie so much. The trend sequences, the World War I sequences, and the World War I aesthetic, I think it's brilliant in this movie. Honestly, there's a large section in the film where Comrad, Ray Fiennes' character's son, goes off to war and he fights in the trenches. And I think all that section of the film is quite frankly, fantastic. I think it's incredible. Honestly, it's so realistic. And even so, there's a large part of this movie which, intentionally is unrealistic. That whole trench sequence, in my opinion, the whole trench section of the film is fantastic. Honestly, there's one sequence in particular which takes place in the middle of the night where basically, the Germans and the British soldiers are all getting like little daggers out and fighting each other, and it's a really intense and really horrific and quite gruesome sequence, and I think it really showcases the horrors of the war, but in the best way possible. I just think it's such a well-directed sequence, and you can clearly tell that, Matthew Vaughn, wants to make a war movie here, and in fact, I think the movie would have worked a bit better. In fact, I think it would have worked a lot better, and this isn't a diss in the movie, because I still quite like The Kingsman, hence this video. But the thing is, though, I think the movie would have worked a lot better if it just focused on the horrors of war. And I think that's what the trench sequences in the film do so well. Honestly, I really do. I think they're really well shot, and I think Matthew Vaughn I think he has an eye for doing World War I, trench sequences and stuff like that. I think he has an eye for doing World War I sequences in these movies. I would not be remorse to Matthew Vaughn directing a war movie in the near distant future. I would not be remorse to that. I mean, I know he did it here, but I would not be remorse to him directing an Indiana Jones-esque movie in the near distant future. I don't think he will, but I would be excited if he did, put it that way. And I think the trench sequence of the film absolutely fantastic. And also, I really like Comrad's storyline. If you've seen the film, you know what I mean there. Comrad is Ray Fiennes' character's son in the film, and I forgot the actor's names, but I think he does a good job in the film. But basically, I really like that storyline. I think it's really good, and if you've seen the storyline, you'll know what I mean. There's a big twist about, I'd say it's about, halfway into the film, maybe just over halfway into the film, and there's a big twist with that character, which I like quite a lot. I'm trying not to give anything away, because I'm trying to get this review, spoiler-free. But basically, he goes off to the trenches, and there's a big twist with his character. You may have guessed it from the way I'm describing it, because I'm not hiding it up that well, but there's a big twist with the Comrad character when he goes into the trenches, and I think that works really well. That really caught me off guard, and in a really good way, and I really liked that about the film. And also, another thing I liked about the film was even so that whole trench section of the film is really realistic, and it's verisimilitude there in the best way possible. And by the way, if you don't know what the word verisimilitude means, go and look it up. But yeah, basically, even so, the whole trench stuff is, really realistic and things like that. That's not good English, but you get my point there. Even so, the verisimilitude in the trench stuff is fantastic. When you get to the other parts of the film, with Ray Fiennes, Jamon Honsu, Gemma Arterton, Tom Hollander, the three Tom Hollanders of that, Daniel Bull, Charles Dance, and Matthew Good, when you get to all those other parts of the movie, even so, you never really feel like you're watching the characters they play, you just feel like you're watching the actors. I like that about this movie. Normally that'd be a criticism if I just feel like I'm watching the actors in the movie and not the characters they're playing. In fact, when I reviewed Belfast last week, one of my big criticisms was, Jamie Dornan in that film and how I didn't believe in his character. All I felt like I was watching was Jamie Dornan. But here, when Charles Dance shows up on screen, or Matthew Good shows up on screen, or when Daniel Bruhl shows up on screen, yes, I feel like I'm watching those actors do two performances, but fully enough, it kind of works in a Kingsman film. It's almost like an inside joke. In the first few Kingsman films, where it's Taron Egerton, Colin Firth, Michael Caine, Samuel Jackson, or in the second one, Julianne Moore, Halle Berry, Channing Tatum, and Jeff Bridges. When they show up, yes, it just feels like actors doing performances, But funnily enough, that all kind of works in those films. And actually it works again here. You know, when Ray Fiennes shows up in this film, you never feel like you're watching anyone but Ray Fiennes, but that's not a criticism. I really like that about the Kingsman franchise, and the same happens here, and I think it works really well. And the same happens, you know, with Charles Dance's movie, and Matthew Good, and John Martin. I think that works really well in the film. And yes, you never feel like you're watching the characters they're playing, you feel like watching the actors portraying those characters, but that's not a criticism, especially with Ray Fiennes. I love the fact that Ray Fiennes in this movie. I just think it's so different for someone like Ray Fiennes to do, and then I think he's brilliant in there, and I think he's so in the action sequences. I like I said before, you know, if he did use stunt doubles, I can't tell. I really can't. And like I said before, he said in an interview actually, I think with Odeon Cinema, so there you go, little plug there for Odeon Cinemas, which I go to, but he said in an interview with Odeon Cinemas that this movie was like one big roller coaster. And you know what? It is. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm not saying it as a criticism. I think this movie is one big roller coaster, and that's really why it works for me, because it's so much fun. And also, there's one other thing I almost forgot to mention, but this movie actually kind of parodies Kingsman the Golden Circle in one scene. Yes, Matthew Vaughn kind of parodies himself, and in a really good way in my opinion. There's one scene in Kingsman the Golden Circle which I hate talking about, but I'm going to talk about it again here, but it's a fingering scene where basically Taron Egerton's character, what's called Eggsy, he has to, you know, finger a woman to put a chip in her so they know where she's going throughout the course of the rest of the movie. And it's just, I don't like talking about that scene, it's such a weird scene in the film. But then, in this movie, in The King's Man, Ray finds his leg was shot earlier in the film, he's got this big wound on his leg, and then he meets Rasputin, and Rasputin's like, I can heal that wound. And then there's this really weird scene where Rasputin is like, over Ray finds his leg, and it's so weird. But you know what? I love that scene, because it feels like it's parodying the, you know, fingering scene in Kingsman the Golden Circle, and not in a bad way. I hate that scene in Kingsman the Golden Circle. I quite enjoy Kingsman the Golden Circle overall, but I hate that scene in it. But then in The King's Man, you know, he feels like Matthew Vaughn is parodying himself, and not in a bad way. I love that scene. I've seen that scene twice now in cinema, and you know, the second time I enjoyed it more because it's so odd. It really is. You know, that scene is kind of like the big reason why I said at the start of the review, why I said at the start of this video today, I'm surprised that, you know, Fox funded this movie. I'm surprised Fox went along with that. I'm surprised Disney went along with that, because in the end, you know, Disney acquired Fox. They delayed the movie for a while, so I'm guessing they watched it, and I'm guessing they may have edited some parts out of it. But I'm surprised Disney and Fox let that scene go ahead of the movie, because it's so weird. In that scene, Rasputin says to Ray Fiennes' character, drop your trousers, and then it's just so weird, the scene. But I love it. I just love the fact that Matthew Vaughn kind of parodies himself in this film, and I just think it works really well. And it's such an odd scene, but I really like it. And also, there's some really other odd decisions in the film as well. There are small parts of Stanley Tucci and Aaron Taylor-Johnson in there, two great actors, and they just kind of pop in the movie, and they play quite big characters, but they're not in the movie that much. And it's just weird decisions like that, which shouldn't work, but funny enough, kind of do for me. It's an odd movie. It's messy. It's convoluted. It's a bit all over the place. And some of the composition and some of the CGI doesn't work whatsoever. But I enjoy it. I do. I enjoy it. Even though the plot is a bit confusing and I still haven't quite wrapped my head around it, I do. I like the movie still. And I think the reason I like it so much is because it's enjoyable. On the surface, that sounds like such a small reason. But especially now, when there's so much, you know, rubbish going on in the world, going to the cinema and enjoying yourself is kind of like why I want to go to the cinema most of the time. You know, I enjoy going to the cinema and watching films like The Green Knight and like June, which are quite, you know, hard-hitting films, and sometimes difficult to watch, especially The Green Knight there. The thing is though, I also enjoy going to the cinema and watching films like, you know, Last Night's Show, like Spider-Man No Way Home, and like, you know, The King's Man, like this movie, and just really enjoying myself. And you know what? That's what happened here. That's what happened here. Especially yesterday when I went to go watch this movie. I enjoyed myself so much, and I had a grin on my face through so much of the movie. Well, I had a grin on my face through most of the movie. And actually, the reason I didn't have a grin on my face was because people on their phones in the cinema. Oh, how I loved that. And by the way, I don't. That was sarcasm. I despise people with their phones out in the cinema. Just turn your phone off for 2 hours. It's not difficult to do. Then anyway, that's neither here or there. Back onto The Kingsman and why I like it. I really enjoy this movie, and I think the end credit song is great as well, which is just a weird detail, but I still really like that. And also, I really enjoy watching the characters. Even so you feel like you're watching actors play characters in the movie, it just works really well. And also the trend stuff is really realistic, and just, it works fantastically in my opinion. But also the action sequences leap off the screen in the best way way possible. The way you want it to happen from a spy film. And you know, that's why it works for me overall, the action. Because I watched action in plenty of action movies in the past, and if the action is quite dull, you know, I end up just remembering the other dull parts of the film, mostly the characters. Like when I watched The Accountant last year, the Ben Affleck film, I just remember sitting back at the end and going, you know, it was fine, but all I can really remember about it is the dull characters played by Ben Affleck and John Bernthal in that film. But then actually, when I watch some like the Kingsman films, even though the characters may not be, you know, fantastically well written, I can still sit back and go, but you know what, those films had great action. And that's kind of why I watch The Kingsman and the Golden Circle still quite a lot, and that's also why I enjoyed The Kingsman. It's by no means perfect. It's not nearly as good as Kingsman and the Secret Service, and it's not as good as Kingsman and the Golden Circle in my opinion, but it's still enjoyable. It's the worst Kingsman film in the franchise yet, but I still enjoy it, and I think that's saying something. You know, the worst film in the franchise, I still kind of like. And overall, I really like it because of the action sequences, because of the performances, because of the characters, which are really fun to watch, and the fact that it is just so enjoyable. And you know, that's kind of why I enjoy it overall. It sounds like quite a small thing, but it's actually quite a big thing, because after watching it a second time, I had so much fun with it, and that is why I'm going to say that The Kingsman is a 7.5 out of 10 from me. You know, I can give it quite a high rating, and I said earlier in this review that I liked just over half of the movie, but I've got to reiterate here that just over half the movie, which I do like, I like quite a lot, and that sells the movie for me. You know, the good outweighs the bad with me in this movie. I don't get along with all the political stuff, and I don't get along with the plot. And, you know, Tom Holland playing 3 different characters doesn't really work in the film. I don't get the joke there, but still, it works with the action sequences. The action sequences work, the trend stuff works for me in the film, the credits song works for me, I think the film is well shot, and also the fact that this film kind of parodies past installments in this franchise. It parodies Kingsman the Golden Circle, and I kind of like that. And I think it's really enjoyable. I think it's a really good time with the movies, and that's why I like it overall. That's why I like The Kingsman, because it's a really enjoyable time at the movies. It's a really enjoyable time at the cinema, or wherever you're going to watch, whether it's at home or whatnot. And I can completely understand why some people wouldn't like this movie. In fact, I don't get along with all the political stuff. But, as someone who's not really into action cinema that much, I can watch the action sequences in any Kingsman film, and this film in particular, and go, wow. And that's kind of why I like the film overall, because of the action and the enjoyment element, and just the fact that it is so much fun to watch. It really is. And that is ultimately why I like The Kingsman overall. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that The Kingsman, I'm going to say that it's a 7.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, what do you think of The Kingsman? Please do comment down below. I'll know your thoughts in the comment section below. Anyway guys, thank you as always for watching. If you haven't yet, please do click down below and subscribe on this video, and look forward to many more both film and TV views come very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye!